Are we filming? Yes, we are. So welcome to another video. Thank you for joining me. I needed to search my soul on this one. Partly because there's been a bit of a delay. This is the book, by the way. I'm going to be talking about the book and what's in the book. But I don't want to. I don't want to hype everything up, so everybody is expecting this amazing thing. And I did let slip that a few weeks ago I had done some filming in London for this video called The Book. It didn't quite work out to plan. And then it's been sitting on the back burner for a while, and then events overtook me because I was a bit under the weather. But we are where we are. But I really want to get this out there, as it were. So we are here. So the reason why I had this notion that I would film in London is because of two things. One, London is my city, if you like. I've always lived within shouting distance, almost, of the city of London for the whole of my life. Excuse me, I'm still struggling with my cough and my throat. That's better. But also because I have connections, historical connections, with London that go back to at least Tudor times. And some of my ancestors kept diaries, journals, if you like, which I find fascinating. And I am a diarist of sorts. And I wanted to share with you the reason why I do this with you all, on location, as it were. But here I am in the studio, and I do have the book in question. So it's this. Some people use a moleskin, or they might use something sort of fairly flexible. This is a Rhodia notebook in A5. Others use a hardback. This is a Rhodia web notebook in A5 size. Lovely paper. Fantastic. But I want to start with Samuel Pepys. So many of you know who Samuel Pepys was. But for those that don't, he was an eminent diarist. He worked for the Admiralty in the 17th century in London. And for 10 years of his life, as a sideline, as it were, he wrote this amazing diary, which is full of interesting stuff. I mean, some of it is eye-popping, but I'll leave you to discover that. But for 10 years, he started on January the 1st, 1660, and almost 10 years he gave up because he was fearful of his eyesight failing as a result of, amongst other things, writing his diary. But it remains a fantastic, absolutely fantastic reference work. Initially, he wasn't planning on other people seeing it, so he wrote it in very, very cryptic shorthand code. But then later he left in amongst his papers, he left a key to that shorthand code, so that future readers were able to decipher it. So his intention must have changed. So initially, he wasn't planning on letting anyone know what he was doing, but later on, he was. Why am I so fascinated with Samuel Pepys? And what on earth has that got to do with me in the 21st century, just writing some stuff? Because my diary will not be, it's only going to be a tiny fraction of interest to future generations when compared to the interest generated by a very, very famous diarist such as Samuel Pepys. Well, we all take our cues. We all take our cues from what we see and do and experience through life. And I think for me, probably because I'm now in my 60s and in not great health, I'm very, very keen to get stuff onto paper quickly. I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon, but you know, time is of the essence. So I've always, well, I can tell you that Samuel Pepys started his diary on the 1st of January 1660. I started my diary on the 25th of December 1972. So we're just coming up to 51 years. Am I right? Yeah, 51 years. Now, I haven't written every day. It's been very, very sporadic in different formats. Joined up writing in capitals, paperbacks. I was even writing on A4 filing paper once and keeping it in a huge lever arch file. And the sad thing is that some of that copy is lost now. Why is it lost? These things happen. These things happen in life. So I'm keen to leave something behind, and what I have decided to do is, although I'm keeping a sort of daily journal that isn't exactly daily, but it's sort of still sporadic, but it's there. I'm also making up for lost time by jotting down my memories of specific events in my life in another book that I call The Other Book, so that at least some of what I'm recording will carry through to the next generation. Do I think people will be interested in me after I'm gone? It's not important. It's not necessary. I mean, I will be gone, so I won't need to worry about it. But there is a level of duty. There is an element of duty when I write in here, because when I read, for instance, my great grandmother's diary that she wrote as a 10-year-old girl in 1859, I'm very, very grateful. I'm very, very grateful to her. And so whether or not it's going to add value to or enrich people's lives in the future, I'd like to at least give them the choice rather than leave nothing at all. I think there's people do have an interest. Sadly, some of them don't, because as an antiques dealer, I have picked up, when I go around a UK-based car boot sale, which is a bit like a yard sale in the US, I guess. Sometimes I pick up other families' diaries, particularly albums of photographs, and quite often there's information written on the back of the photograph, and you think, how on earth can people let this slip through their fingers? But it is inevitable, isn't it? It is inevitable that this sort of thing happens, and things are lost. I've even I sometimes buy collections of Victorian postcards, and they've obviously got the address, and I will actually put a new stamp on and send that postcard to the address written on the postcard, so that even though the original family have lost this, there is a possibility that there might be some element of repatriation by sending the postcard to the address with the new owner, or the new owner may know the person who originally lived there, or a descendant may still live there. And I'm sort of spreading the love. I will never ever know what happens to these, but I do it. So there's this sort of romantic, almost a romantic desire to perpetuate history through the written word. And if I can do that and repay my great-great-grandmother's efforts to take time to write to me through the medium of the written words, then the least I can do is carry that forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 years in this format. Let me talk about this format. So my diary has had many formats. Most of them actually have been A5, without previously thinking about this too much. But I was looking the other day at Captain Scott's famous diary in the British Library, where they open it. It's Captain Scott of the Antarctic, very, very famous chap. And it's a very, very sort of spidery scrawl. It's this format. And when I look at St Cuthbert's Gospel, again in the British Library, which is the oldest surviving book in Europe with its original binding, it's this format. I have some diaries. Oh, have I got one here? Let me see if, yeah, I've got one here. So this is a diary written by Ellen Wheeler, probably in Pontefract, Yorkshire, and this dates from 1862. It's, well, more or less, it's this format. And I'm just thinking, purely from a mercenary point of view, in terms of survivability. Which has more potential to survive 2, 3, 4, 500 years? An A5 or an A6? My gut feeling is A6 is probably going to be more likely to not be chucked out in the rubbish, because it's small enough to be tucked away in a drawer. It's small enough to fit on any sized bookshelf. This might be too big. So size, I think, is everything when it comes to the chance of longevity. Now, there are other things involved as well, like whether the paper is acid free, the ink you use, if this is involved in a flood, which is a possibility, especially with all the global warming. Lots of people have their properties flooded out. Will my descendants be living in a floodplain? Will this be soaked? Will the ink run? So I personally think hardback, A6 as a diary or a journal. I know some people call associate a diary as a planner, but certainly in the UK, we refer to a diary either as a planner or a journal. So I need to really talk about this as a journal. I'm talking about a book for writing stuff down to be remembered, rather than in any sense planning. So this is why I'm doing it. I want to leave a potential legacy, or give my descendants an option to keep this or chuck it away as they see fit. But at least I'm giving them the option. What it is obviously an A6 binder. Doesn't have to be, but I think A6 is a good choice. And then the how. How am I creating this? How much interest am I adding into this? Because diaries can be a little bit stale, especially if you force yourself to write every day. There may not be much in the way of interest in the information you add to a diary. But I want you to think about something. If you found in a trunk, a storage chest, a book, a journal, what would be the interesting things that you would like to see in here? For me personally, it's the minutiae of daily life. For instance, what people spent on what. So how much was their grocery bill, for instance? If they bought a car, how much was the car? How much was the cost of fuel to fuel that car, or their insurance? Or if you're tracing family history, maybe, the frustration things. I met so-and-so. Well, where? What was the address? Facts and figures, prices, items purchased, addresses visited, how much did it cost to go to London on the train? Timetables. How long did it take to go by train? How long did it take to go by car? What are the speed limits for the town you travelled through? So it's the facts and figures of daily life that are... I'm just going to blow my nose, excuse me. That's better. But it's the facts and figures of daily life that are the most fascinating, because these tend to be things that generally don't survive for normal working class people. They disappear into the ether. And so I have some sections in here that I think will not only benefit me, because I want to, on a short-term basis, I want to record this stuff for my own purposes, but I include it in here, warts and all, so people can actually find, hopefully, this data, if you like, interesting. People just generally don't want flowery language. They're not interested in your capability formulating prose. They want to know stuff. And so in here is stuff. And I want to share with you some examples of how I do this. And I use threading. Threading is a technique where you can use the same book for different things and you can navigate easily. I'll give you an example. So here we have a double page spread. It says purchases. And this number here, page 38, means that if I want to go back to the previous page associated with purchases, I just turn back to page 38 and it's there. If I want to go to the next page after this one, purchases, I go to page 68. Let me just turn to page 68 just to show you. And I've put these in advance of writing them out, so that because I don't want to share any personal data. Okay, so we've now got another double page spread marked purchases. And we can see that we've come from page 49 and we can't go any further because this is the very, very last allocated page. So let's go back to 49. So it's a threaded book. And remember, people are going to potentially be flicking through this in 200 or 300 years, it's a fun thing to think about. What are purchases? Well, I'm in business. Even though I'm sort of retired, I still buy stuff and then sell it. So it's interesting to keep a ledger, if you like. I add it here because I keep this book on hand most of the time. I even travel with it. I was in London the other week with this very book. And then I jot it down, and then at a later date I add it to my my purchase ledger, which is digital. But it's here in black and white or blue and white. What else? What other sections? I mean, I have loads of sections here. The next one, as an example, is sales. So if I sell something from a business point of view, it goes down here. So that's going to be very interesting, I think, for people in the future descendants. Next one, expenses. Very, very important. So that's self-explanatory. And then I have a personal one, weight. Now, this is something that very, very rarely appears in a diary, I imagine. But in the future, I think people might want to, they'd be interested in my struggles to lose weight. Who knows? They may or may not. But the thing is, this book becomes, over time, over the months, becomes a compendium of interesting facts. So it's rather than a jewelry, rather than a journal, I look at it as an interesting compendium of facts for future generations to pore over and discuss and read with interest. So that's how I do this. Next one, let's have a look. Health. Now, for me, this is a big one because I jot down stuff. And again, I think that might be it's useful to me because I have to jot this stuff down anyway. But jotting it down in the book means that I tend to have it on hand. I don't have a specific health record. Well, I do digitally, but from a written point of view, I have it here. Next one is my journal, which is general stuff, almost like Samuel Pepys' diary. He would, if he was around and read this, he would say, that's Neil Bristow's journal. Yeah, good on him. Then I've got notes domestic. Well, that means anything to do with domestic stuff. Then I've got one called Discussions with D. D is a relative. Why do I jot down and record details or brief outlines of discussions? It's because I want to, before I have the next discussion, I can quickly look at this and then I don't forget what I have already discussed with D. And that allows me to come across as having a superhuman brain that never forgets anything. So I do, when I make after I've put the phone down and finished a conversation with someone, then I will just do a brief resume of what we've discussed so that we can pick up in a week or two's time. And so I jot down discussions, and I think this might be interesting for future generations as well, because the daughter or the granddaughter or the great-grandson of D, and they will know who D is even though you don't, will think, oh, that's so interesting. So they were discussing those things way back in 2023. So again, I think quite interesting. And here's another one, Discussions with B, another person I know who I regularly communicate with. And then Notes Business. And then purchases again. So we're looking at more purchases. So we just roll through. And so all these, you could have 10, 20, 30 different categories within this book that I call the book. And it effectively has an element for a section for a traditional journal, as I showed you a few pages ago, but it's absolutely packed with data. And when this is finished, how many pages is this one? This is 156 pages. That becomes an absolutely fascinating mine of information, the minutiae of my life, such as it is, for future generations potentially, and as an aid memoir for me to give myself a competitive edge when it comes to memory. And having a competitive edge with memory is something that is a highly desirable thing, as you will appreciate, because you're watching this video, you're interested in everything to do with paper-based productivity. And so this is it. This is my book. It's a journal, but rather than a journal, I would describe it as a compendium of interesting facts for future reference and future generations, potentially in a format or package, if you like, a size that will give it its maximum potential to survive 100, 200, 500 years. No reason why this couldn't be 500 years old. And I just think that that's something that I think it's a good strategy, certainly for me. I'm acutely aware that we're not going to be here forever, so this might stop suddenly, but whatever's in here, when it's time to move on, I hope it will be useful for whoever has the opportunity to look at it in the future. A bit long-winded, and I didn't plan this. I didn't plan this to be a studio-based thing, but I definitely wanted to get this off my chest, as it were, to share with you just what's going on in my journal, as it is. And until the next video, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Let me try that again. Thank you very much, and goodbye.